The chill of morning fog wrapped around Theresa Adams like a shroud as she stumbled down the muddy main street of Dillon, Montana. A place she'd never seen before yesterday, and a place she now found herself trapped in, courtesy of the husband who had traded her away like livestock. April 1875 had brought more than spring showers to Theresa's life. At 23, she never imagined she'd be considered property to be bartered, but Martin Flint, the man she'd married 2 years prior, had shown his true colors when his gambling debts mounted. Last night, drunk and desperate after losing everything at the poker table, Martin had offered the one thing he had left her. Theresa wiped tears from her face as she recalled the nightmare. The saloon had gone quiet when Martin, slurring his words, announced, "Gentlemen, I'll wager my wife." The shock had paralyzed her, standing there with a tray of drinks she'd been serving to help pay down his debts. She'd worked at that saloon for 3 months, suffering the indignity of wandering hands and lewd comments, all to keep a roof over their heads. But even that hadn't been enough. When Martin lost the hand, he'd shrugged, tossed her arm toward the winner, and staggered to the bar for another drink. The winner, a grizzled cattle driver passing through, had leered at her before announcing he'd rather have a sturdy horse than a weeping woman. The transaction was completed before Theresa could even process what was happening. Now she had nothing. No home, no husband, no dignity. Just the clothes on her back and the crushing reality that in this world a woman was worth less than a horse. "Miss, are you all right?" The voice startled her. Theresa looked up to see a tall man astride a chestnut stallion. His face was partially hidden by the shadow of his hat, but she could see concern in his eyes. She'd never seen him before, which meant he wasn't one of the men from the saloon who had witnessed her humiliation. "I'm fine," she lied, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Forgive me for saying so, but you don't look fine." His voice was gentle but firm. He dismounted, keeping a respectful distance. "My name's Adam Jensen. I own the Double J Ranch outside of town." Theresa hesitated. She'd learned the hard way not to trust men with kind words and concerned looks. "I don't need charity, Mr. Jensen. Never suggested you did." He shrugged. "But it's not often I see someone looking quite so lost on Main Street at daybreak." The simple observation broke something in her. Before she could stop herself, the words tumbled out. "My husband sold me for a horse," she said, her voice cracking on the final word. Adam Jensen went very still. His jaw tightened and something dark flickered across his face. When he spoke, his voice was low. "Then you're priceless to me." The words hung in the air between them, and Theresa wasn't sure what to make of them. Was this another man seeing an opportunity to take advantage of a woman with no protection? As if reading her thoughts, he clarified, "I mean no disrespect, miss. Only that any man who would trade a woman for an animal clearly has no concept of value. I'd like to help if you'll allow it." "Why would you help a stranger?" "Because my mother taught me better than to walk past someone in need." He gestured toward a small building down the street. "My sister runs the general store. She's been looking for help and there's a room above it. It's simple, but it's clean and safe." Theresa's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "And what would you want in return, Mr. Jensen?" "Nothing. It's honest work for honest pay." His expression softened. "Sometimes people just need a chance, miss." "Adams, Theresa Adams," she paused. "I was Theresa Flint until last night, I suppose." "Miss Adams, then. The choice is yours, I won't pressure you, but Hannah, my sister, she could use the help, and you look like you could use a place to stay." Theresa considered her options, which were painfully few. She had no money, no friends in Dillon, and the thought of returning to work at the saloon, where everyone knew what had happened, made her stomach turn. "I accept your offer, Mr. Jensen. But I want to be clear, I'll work for my keep, and I won't be beholden to any man ever again." Adam nodded, a small smile forming. I wouldn't expect anything less. And please call me Adam. Theresa found herself following this stranger down the street, wondering if she was making another terrible mistake. But something told her Adam Jensen was different from Martin. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet strength that didn't need to announce itself. When they arrived at Jensen's general store, a bell tinkled as they entered. A woman with the same warm brown eyes as Adam looked up from behind the counter. "Hannah," Adam called, "I've found someone to help with the store. This is Miss Theresa Adams." Hannah Jensen's smile was genuine as she came around the counter, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. "Oh, thank goodness. I've been trying to run this place and help Mrs. Carlson with her new baby. It's been near impossible." "Miss Adams needs a fresh start," Adam said simply, not revealing Theresa's humiliation. She felt a rush of gratitude for his discretion. Hannah showed Theresa to the small room above the store. It was indeed simple: a narrow bed, a washstand, a small table with a lamp, and a window overlooking the main street. But it was clean, and it was hers. "The door locks from inside," Hannah pointed out, "and no one will bother you up here. We open at 7 and close at 6 except Sundays." "Will that suit you?" Theresa nodded, overcome. "It's perfect, thank you." After Hannah left, Theresa sat on the bed and allowed herself a moment to breathe. For the first time since Martin had declared, "I'll wager my wife," she felt something other than despair. It was a tiny seed of hope, and she intended to nurture it carefully. The next morning, Theresa woke before dawn and dressed in the one other dress she owned. She'd managed to grab a small satchel of possessions when the cattle driver had made it clear he had no use for her. The dress was faded but clean, and Theresa took extra care with her appearance. She brushed her long auburn hair until it shone, then pinned it neatly at the nape of her neck. First impressions mattered, especially now. When she descended the stairs, she found Hannah already arranging fresh bread on the counter. "You're an early riser," Hannah remarked approvingly. "That'll serve you well here. Most of the ranchers' wives come in early to avoid the midday heat." "I'm used to early mornings," Theresa replied, thinking of all the times she'd risen before dawn to prepare Martin's breakfast before he headed to whatever job he'd managed to keep that week. Hannah showed Theresa the store's organization system, where the account books were kept, and how to operate the coffee grinder. By the time they opened the doors, Theresa felt reasonably prepared to face her first day. The morning passed in a blur of customers, questions, and learning the rhythms of the store. Hannah was patient, and the townspeople seemed friendly enough, though Theresa could feel curious eyes on her. Small towns thrived on gossip, and a new woman in town was bound to attract attention. Just before noon, the bell above the door jingled and Adam Jensen entered. He nodded politely to Theresa before approaching his sister. "How's it going?" he asked, his voice low. "Wonderfully," Hannah replied. "Theresa's a quick learner. I might actually get to help Margaret Carlson with the baby this afternoon." Adam's gaze shifted to Theresa, and she felt a strange flutter in her stomach. "Glad to hear it. Miss Adams, are you settling in all right?" "Yes, thank you, Mr. Jensen." "Adam," he reminded her gently. "Adam," she conceded. He nodded, seemingly pleased. "Good. I've got to head back to the ranch, but I wanted to check in. Hannah, I'll be back in town on Saturday for supplies." After he left, Theresa caught Hannah watching her with a knowing smile. "My brother doesn't usually make special trips into town just to check in," she said. "He must think you're something special." Theresa felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure he's just being kind. He found me in quite a state." Hannah's expression softened. "Adam has a good heart, but he doesn't extend himself for everyone. Whatever brought you to Dillon must have touched him deeply." Theresa turned away, busying herself with reorganizing a shelf of canned goods. It's not a story worth telling. Hannah didn't press, and Theresa was grateful. The less people knew about how she came to be in Dillon, the better chance she had of starting fresh. The days fell into a comfortable routine. Theresa worked in the store from opening until closing, learning the names and preferences of regular customers. She kept the books in meticulous order, something Hannah seemed particularly grateful for. "Numbers make my head spin," Hannah confessed one evening as they closed up. "Adam usually has to correct my accounts, but he says yours are perfect." Theresa couldn't help but feel a small surge of pride. Her father had been a schoolteacher before he died, and he'd insisted on educating his daughter as thoroughly as any son. Those lessons had been one of the few things Martin couldn't gamble away. True to his word, Adam returned on Saturday for supplies. He loaded sacks of flour, sugar, coffee, and other essentials into his wagon while making small talk with Theresa. She found herself watching the way his muscles moved under his shirt as he lifted the heavy items, then looked away quickly when he caught her eye. "The ranch hands are coming in for supplies tomorrow," he mentioned as he prepared to leave. "They can be a rowdy bunch. If any of them give you trouble, you let me know." "I can handle myself," Theresa assured him. Adam's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I don't doubt that for a minute, Miss Adams, but sometimes it helps to have someone in your corner." As he said goodbye, his hand brushed hers briefly, and Theresa felt that strange flutter again. She watched him drive away, confused by her reaction. After Martin, she'd sworn never to let another man close enough to hurt her. Yet here she was, noticing the breadth of Adam Jensen's shoulders and the warmth of his smile. That evening, as Theresa was sweeping the store after closing, the bell jangled. She looked up, ready to politely inform the late customer that they were closed, and froze. Martin Flint stood in the doorway, looking considerably more sober than the last time she'd seen him. "There you are," he slurred, and Theresa realized he wasn't sober at all. He was simply functioning drunk, a state she was all too familiar with. "Been looking all over town for you." Theresa gripped the broom handle tightly. "Get out, Martin. Now, is that any way to greet your husband?" He took a stumbling step forward. "You gave up the right to call yourself that when you wagered me in a card game," Theresa spat. Martin waved a dismissive hand. "That was just a misunderstanding. I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it." "You sold me for a horse," Theresa said, her voice rising. "You traded me away like I was nothing. And now I'm here to take you home." He advanced another step. "We'll leave this backwater town and start fresh someplace else." Theresa raised the broom. "I'm not going anywhere with you. We're done, Martin." His face darkened. "You don't get to decide that. You're my wife." "Not anymore." Theresa stood her ground, though her heart was racing. "Leave now or I'll scream." "This is a small town, Martin. People will come," he sneered. "No one's coming to help you. You're nothing here, just like you were nothing in Helena." Before Theresa could respond, the back door of the store opened and Hannah walked in. She assessed the situation in an instant. "Is everything all right, Theresa?" she asked, her voice steady. "Everything's fine," Martin answered before Theresa could speak. "Just having a conversation with my wife." Hannah's eyes narrowed. "I wasn't asking you, mister." She moved to stand beside Theresa. "Do you need help?" Theresa nodded, grateful beyond words for Hannah's presence. "Then I suggest you leave, sir," Hannah said to Martin, "before I fetch the sheriff." Martin looked like he might argue, but something in Hannah's expression must have convinced him it wasn't worth the trouble, at least not tonight. "This isn't over, Theresa," he growled as he backed toward the door. "You belong to me." After he stumbled out, Hannah locked the door behind him and turned to Theresa. "Was that my husband, ex-husband?" Theresa's hands were shaking. "I'm sorry to bring trouble to your door." Hannah shook her head firmly. "You have nothing to apologize for." But I think we should tell Adam about this. Theresa's stomach dropped. No, please, he's been kind enough already. I don't want to be more of a burden. Theresa, Hannah said gently, Martin threatened you, and he knows where you work. This isn't about being a burden, it's about being safe. In the end, Theresa agreed, though reluctantly. Hannah insisted on staying the night in the store with her, making a pallet on the floor of Theresa's room. I don't think he'll come back tonight, Hannah said as they prepared for bed, but I'll sleep better knowing you're not alone. Theresa lay awake long after Hannah's breathing had deepened into sleep. Martin had found her. Her fresh start was already tainted. Would she ever truly escape him? The next morning, Hannah sent a message to Adam at the ranch. By midday, he arrived at the store, his expression grave as Hannah recounted the previous night's events. He threatened you? Adam asked Theresa, his voice tight. In a manner of speaking, Theresa admitted, but Martin's always been more talk than action. That's not particularly reassuring, Adam said. A man who would sell his wife isn't someone whose moral boundaries I'd care to test. Theresa flinched at the blunt assessment, and Adam immediately looked contrite. I'm sorry, that was insensitive. It's the truth, Theresa said quietly. Adam studied her for a moment. I'd like to speak with Sheriff Donovan about this. If your husband, ex-husband, Theresa corrected firmly. If Martin Flint is making threats, the sheriff should know about it. Theresa hesitated. In her experience, the law didn't concern itself much with domestic disputes, but perhaps things were different in Dillon. All right, she agreed, but I'd like to speak to the sheriff myself. Adam nodded, respect evident in his expression. Of course. I'll take you there now, if that's agreeable. Hannah assured them she could manage the store alone for an hour, so Theresa found herself walking down Main Street with Adam Jensen, conscious of curious glances from townspeople. Sheriff Donovan turned out to be a weathered man with kind eyes who listened attentively as Theresa explained her situation, including the humiliating circumstances that had brought her to Dillon. So legally, you're still married? The sheriff asked when she'd finished. Theresa hadn't considered the legal aspects. I suppose so. But he sold me, Sheriff, traded me away. The sheriff's expression darkened. That's not something the law recognizes, Miss Adams. A woman isn't property to be sold or traded, no matter what some men might believe. So what can be done? Adam asked, his voice carefully controlled. Well, I can run this Flint character out of town if he causes more trouble, Sheriff Donovan said. But unless Miss Adams gets a proper divorce, he has certain legal rights as her husband. Theresa felt sick. She hadn't considered that Martin might have legal claim to her still. The sheriff must have seen her distress. Don't worry yourself too much, he said kindly. Montana Territory has fairly progressive divorce laws. Abandonment and cruelty are both grounds for divorce, and it sounds like you've got cause for both. How would I go about obtaining a divorce? Theresa asked, trying to keep her voice steady. You'd need to file a petition with the territorial court. Judge Wilson comes through Dillon every other month. Next visit is in 3 weeks. I'd be happy to help you prepare your case. Theresa thanked the sheriff, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. Freedom from Martin was within reach, but 3 weeks was a long time for him to cause trouble. As they left the sheriff's office, Adam was unusually quiet. When they reached the store, he finally spoke. I'd like to make a suggestion, if I may. Theresa braced herself. Yes. The ranch house has plenty of room, and it's far enough from town that Martin Flint wouldn't easily find it. You'd be welcome to stay there until your divorce is settled. Theresa blinked in surprise. At your home. Hannah lives there too, he added quickly. You'd have your own room, of course, complete privacy. Hannah could bring you to town for work each morning and back in the evening. It was a generous offer, but Theresa hesitated. I don't want to impose. It's not an imposition if it's freely offered, Adam said. And frankly, I'd rest easier knowing you were safe. There was something in his eyes that made Theresa's breath catch. Concern, certainly, but something else too. Something that made her wonder if his offer was motivated by more than just neighborly kindness. "Let me think about it," she said finally. Adam nodded. "Of course. The offer stands whenever you decide." That evening, as Theresa was closing up the store, the bell jingled. She looked up, momentarily terrified that Martin had returned, but instead saw a group of men she recognized as ranch hands from various properties around Dillon. "Evening, miss," one called. "We're looking for supplies." Theresa relaxed slightly. "I'm sorry, gentlemen, we're just closing." "Could you return tomorrow?" One of the men, a tall, bearded fellow with an unpleasant smile, stepped forward. "Now that's not very hospitable. We rode a long way." Hannah emerged from the back room. "Is there a problem?" "No problem at all, Miss Jensen," the bearded man said, his tone shifting to something more respectful. "Just hoping to get some supplies before heading back to the Crooked R." "We open at 7 tomorrow," Hannah said firmly. "You're welcome then." The men grumbled but turned to leave. As they filed out, the bearded one paused beside Theresa. "You're Flint's woman, aren't you?" he murmured, low enough that Hannah couldn't hear. "The one he traded for old man Wilkins's stallion." He laughed softly. "Got to say, that horse wasn't worth much, so what does that make you?" Theresa felt as though she'd been slapped. Before she could respond, the man tipped his hat with mock politeness and sauntered out. Hannah must have seen something in Theresa's face. "What did he say to you?" Theresa shook her head, fighting tears. "Nothing important." "Theresa." "I think I'd like to accept Adam's offer," Theresa said suddenly. "To stay at the ranch until the divorce is settled." Hannah's expression softened. "I think that's a wise decision. I'll send word to Adam tonight. We can move your things in the morning." That night, Theresa packed her meager belongings, her mind racing. She'd been in Dillon less than 2 weeks, and already her past was catching up to her. The ranch hand's comments proved that the story of how she came to be in Dillon was spreading. How long before everyone in town looked at her with that same mix of contempt and amusement? The next morning, Adam himself arrived with the wagon. He loaded Theresa's single satchel with a gentle reverence that made her throat tight. "Is this everything?" he asked. Theresa nodded, embarrassed by how little she possessed. "Travel light, do you?" His smile took any sting from the words. Martin wasn't one for settling down, Theresa explained. "We moved often, usually one step ahead of his debts. I learned not to accumulate much." Something flashed in Adam's eyes, anger perhaps, but quickly controlled. "Well, you can stay at the Double J as long as you need. No need to travel light anymore." The ride to the ranch took nearly an hour. As they left the town behind, Theresa felt some of the tension leave her body. Out here, with the vast Montana landscape stretching around them, Martin Flint seemed less threatening. The Double J Ranch was larger than Theresa had imagined. The main house was a substantial 2-story structure of weathered wood, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings dotted the property, and in the distance, Theresa could see cattle grazing. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. Adam's expression warmed with pride. "My father built it, started with nothing but a claim and a dream. By the time he died 10 years ago, the Double J was one of the most successful ranches in the territory." "You've continued his legacy admirably," Theresa observed, noting the well-maintained buildings and healthy livestock. "I've tried. There's always more to do, but I'm proud of what we've built here." He helped her down from the wagon. "Let me show you where you'll be staying." The inside of the ranch house was as impressive as the exterior, not ostentatious, but solidly built and comfortably furnished. Adam led her to a room on the second floor with windows overlooking the eastern pastures. "This was my mother's sewing room," he explained. "Hannah had a bed moved in yesterday. I hope it will be comfortable." The room was small but pleasant, with a single bed, a chest of drawers, and a rocking chair near the window. A colorful quilt covered the bed, and fresh flowers stood in a jar on the dresser. "It's perfect," Theresa said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you." "You're welcome to use any part of the house," Adam told her. "The library has plenty of books if you enjoy reading, and meals are at 7, noon, and 6, but Mrs. Cooper, our housekeeper, always keeps something for anyone who misses a meal." "You've thought of everything." Adam shrugged, looking almost bashful. "Hannah helped. She's better at these things." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Hannah called from downstairs that dinner would be ready soon. "I'll let you get settled," Adam said, backing toward the door. "And Theresa—" "I meant what I said. You're safe here." For the first time since Martin had wagered her in that fateful poker game, Theresa truly believed it. Life at the Double J settled into a pleasant rhythm. Each morning, Hannah drove Theresa to town in the buggy, and they worked together in the store. In the evenings, they returned to the ranch for dinner with Adam and occasionally some of the ranch hands. Adam was often busy with ranch work, but he made a point of joining them for the evening meal. Theresa found herself looking forward to those dinners, to hearing about his day and sharing stories from the store. He listened when she spoke, really listened in a way Martin never had. One evening, about a week after Theresa had moved to the ranch, Adam found her in the library after dinner. She was curled in a window seat, reading by the last light of day. "Find something good?" he asked, entering quietly. Theresa held up the book. "Emerson. I've never read him before." "My father was fond of Emerson, said he spoke to the American spirit." Adam settled into a nearby chair. "Do you read much?" "Whenever I can. My father was a teacher. He believed education was important for everyone, daughters included." "A progressive man," Adam observed. "You must miss him." Theresa nodded. "He died when I was 16, influenza. My mother followed 6 months later." "I'm sorry," Adam said simply. "It was a long time ago." Theresa closed the book. "What about your parents?" "My father died of a heart ailment 10 years ago. Mother lasted another 5 years before pneumonia took her." His expression softened with memory. "They had a good marriage. The kind where they were truly partners in everything." "That's rare," Theresa murmured. "Is it?" Adam looked genuinely curious. "I always thought that was how marriage should be." "Perhaps it should," Theresa agreed, "but in my experience it rarely is." Adam studied her for a moment. "Your husband," he caught himself. "Martin Flint didn't see you as a partner." "Martin saw me as a convenience," Theresa said bluntly. "Someone to cook his meals, warm his bed, and eventually something to wager when he ran out of other possessions." Adam's jaw tightened. "I can't understand a man thinking that way." "No," Theresa said softly. "I don't imagine you can." Their eyes met across the dim library, and Theresa felt that familiar flutter in her stomach. There was something building between them, something she wasn't ready to name. Adam seemed to sense her unease. He stood, clearing his throat. "It's getting dark. I should let you get back to your reading." "Actually, I think I'll turn in early," Theresa said, setting the book aside. "It's been a long day." Adam nodded. "Good night then, Theresa." "Good night, Adam." As she climbed the stairs to her room, Theresa couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened in that quiet library exchange. She'd shared more of herself with Adam than she'd intended, and his response had been nothing but respectful understanding. It was dangerous, this growing fondness for Adam Jensen. She was still legally married, still entangled with Martin, and even once the divorce was finalized, could she ever truly trust another man? Could she risk her heart again? the answer should have been simple. No, never again. But as Theresa prepared for bed, she found herself remembering the way Adam's eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentleness in his hands when he helped her from the wagon, the respect in his voice when he spoke to her. Perhaps, someday, the answer might be different. 3 days later, trouble arrived at the Double J. Theresa and Hannah had just returned from the store and were helping Mrs. Cooper prepare dinner when the sound of approaching horses drew them to the window. 3 riders were coming up the drive, and Theresa recognized the center one immediately, Martin Flint, sitting unsteadily in the saddle. "That's him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's Martin." Hannah's expression hardened. "Mrs. Cooper, fetch my brother from the south pasture." Now, the housekeeper hurried out the back door while Hannah moved to the gun cabinet and removed a shotgun. "Hannah, what are you doing?" Theresa asked, alarmed, "making sure those men understand they're not welcome here." Hannah checked that the weapon was loaded. "Stay inside, Theresa." "No," Theresa said firmly, surprising herself. "This is my problem, I won't hide." Hannah looked like she might argue, but something in Theresa's expression must have convinced her. "All right, but I'm keeping this handy." They stepped onto the porch as the riders reached the house. Martin dismounted clumsily, nearly falling. His companions, rough-looking men Theresa didn't recognize, stayed on their horses. "There she is," Martin called, his words slurring. "Told you she'd be here, boys." "Mr. Flint," Hannah said coldly, the shotgun visible but pointed at the ground. "You're trespassing on private property." Martin ignored her, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Theresa. "Come on, Theresa, time to go home." "I am home," Theresa replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Martin's face darkened. "Don't be stupid. You're my wife and you're coming with me." "I've filed for divorce," Theresa told him, which wasn't strictly true yet but would be as soon as Judge Wilson arrived. "Our marriage is over, Martin." "Divorce?" Martin laughed, an ugly sound. "No wife of mine is getting a divorce. What would people say?" "I don't care what people say," Theresa replied. "I care about being free of a man who sold me for a horse." One of Martin's companions snickered, and Martin shot him a murderous look. "You've been filled with all sorts of ideas since coming here," Martin growled, taking a step forward. "Time to remind you who's in charge." Hannah raised the shotgun slightly. "That's close enough." Martin eyed the weapon, then smirked. "You won't shoot me, and even if you did, my friends here would make you sorry." "Perhaps," came a new voice, "but they'd be dead before they could." Adam rode into the yard, rifle in hand, with 2 ranch hands flanking him. All 3 had weapons trained on Martin and his companions. "Jensen," Martin spat. "Should have known you'd be behind this, filling my wife's head with nonsense." "Miss Adams is capable of thinking for herself," Adam replied evenly, "and she's made it clear she wants nothing to do with you." "She's not Miss Adams," Martin sneered. "She's Mrs. Flint, my lawfully wedded wife." "Not for much longer," Theresa said. "Judge Wilson arrives in 2 weeks. I'll be filing for divorce on grounds of abandonment and cruelty." Martin's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful—" "That's enough," Adam interrupted, his voice like steel. "You have 2 choices, Flint. Ride away now and never come back, or I'll have my men escort you to Sheriff Donovan for threatening Miss Adams." Martin glared at Adam, then at Theresa. For a moment, she thought he might actually charge the porch, shotgun and rifle be damned. But then one of his companions leaned over and muttered something in his ear. Martin spat on the ground. "This isn't over," he snarled, but he turned and staggered back to his horse. After 3 attempts, he managed to mount. "Remember what I said," Adam called as they turned to leave. "Don't come back to the Double J, ever." They watched in tense silence as the 3 riders disappeared down the drive. Only when they were completely out of sight did Theresa realize she was trembling. "Are you all right?" Adam asked, dismounting and coming to the porch. Theresa nodded, not trusting her voice. "He won't be back," one of the ranch hands said confidently. "Not with those odds." "Don't be so sure, Pete," Adam replied. "Men like that don't give up easily." He turned to Theresa. "I'm sorry you had to face him." "I'm not," Theresa said, finding her voice. "I needed to stand up to him, to make it clear I won't be intimidated." Adam studied her with something like admiration. "You're a remarkably brave woman, Theresa Adams." The sincere compliment warmed her more than it should have. "All the same," Hannah interjected, "I think we should be cautious. Martin Flint seems like the type to hold a grudge." "Agreed," Adam said. "No one goes anywhere alone for the next couple of weeks, not until the judge arrives and Theresa's divorce is underway." The next 2 weeks passed without incident, but the atmosphere at the Double J remained vigilant. Adam arranged for one of the hands to accompany Hannah and Theresa to and from town each day. He also spoke with Sheriff Donovan, who promised to keep an eye out for Martin Flint and his companions. Despite the undercurrent of tension, Theresa found herself settling more comfortably into life at the ranch. The simple routine of work and meals, of quiet evenings in the library or on the porch, brought a peace she hadn't experienced in years. And then there was Adam. They'd begun taking walks together in the evenings, ostensibly so he could show her the ranch, but Theresa knew there was more to it. Their conversations ranged from books to childhood memories to dreams for the future. She learned about his hopes for the Double J, his concerns about the changing cattle market, his fondness for raising horses. In turn, she shared stories of her father's schoolhouse, her mother's garden, the life she'd imagined for herself before her parents' deaths had left her vulnerable to Martin Flint's charm. "I was naive," she admitted one evening as they walked along the creek that bordered the eastern edge of the ranch. "Martin seemed so confident, so sure of everything. After losing my parents, that certainty was appealing." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "We all make decisions that seem right at the time. It's what we do afterward that matters." "And what do you think of what I'm doing now?" Theresa asked, genuinely curious. Adam stopped walking, turning to face her. The setting sun cast golden light across his features as he considered his answer. "I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met," he said finally. "You faced betrayal and humiliation that would break many, yet here you stand, determined to build a new life on your own terms. It's remarkable." Theresa felt her cheeks warm at the genuine admiration in his voice. "I don't feel particularly strong most days." "That's the thing about strength," Adam said softly. "The strongest people rarely recognize it in themselves." Their eyes met, and for a moment Theresa thought he might reach for her hand. But Adam simply smiled and resumed walking, respecting the boundaries she needed while her marriage was still legally intact. That respect only made Theresa's growing feelings for him stronger. Judge Wilson arrived in Dillon right on schedule. The territorial circuit judge was a formidable man with bushy white eyebrows and piercing blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Sheriff Donovan had helped Theresa prepare her petition for divorce, and the judge heard her case in his temporary chambers at the town hall. Adam insisted on accompanying her, though he waited outside during her testimony. Inside the judge's chambers, Theresa recounted her marriage to Martin, the early promises that had never materialized, his growing gambling addiction, the constant moves to escape creditors, and finally, the humiliating poker game where he had wagered and lost her. Judge Wilson listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he removed his spectacles and polished them thoughtfully. "In my 30 years on the bench, Miss Adams, I've heard many divorce petitions. Yours is among the more compelling." He replaced his spectacles. Montana Territory's divorce statutes are quite clear on the matter of abandonment and cruelty. Based on your testimony, you have grounds for both. Relief flooded through Theresa. So you'll grant the divorce. There is the matter of service, the judge said. Your husband must be notified of the proceedings and given the opportunity to contest. Theresa's heart sank. But he's unlikely to accept service willingly. That's why we have sheriffs, Judge Wilson said with a slight smile. I'll issue the divorce summons today. Sheriff Donovan will serve Mr. Flint, assuming he can be located. If your husband fails to appear at the hearing in 60 days, I'll grant the divorce by default. It wasn't the immediate resolution Theresa had hoped for, but it was progress. Thank you, Your Honor. One more thing, Miss Adams, the judge said as she stood to leave. Montana law allows for the restoration of your maiden name upon divorce. Is that something you would wish? Yes, Theresa said without hesitation. I want to be Theresa Adams again. When she emerged from the chambers, Adam was waiting. One look at her face told him the news was good. He's granting the divorce, he asked hopefully. In 60 days, yes, assuming Martin doesn't contest it. Theresa couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. I'll be free. Adam's expression mirrored her joy. That calls for a celebration. Dinner at the hotel tonight. My treat. The invitation sounded dangerously like a courting gesture, but Theresa found she didn't mind. I'd like that. The Dillon Hotel's dining room was the finest establishment in town. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, and a menu that featured more than the standard fare of most local eateries. Theresa wore her best dress, still modest by any standard, but she'd taken extra care with her hair, arranging it in a style her mother had taught her for special occasions. When Adam arrived to escort her, he was equally dressed for the occasion in a crisp white shirt, black string tie, and a suit coat that emphasized his broad shoulders. His eyes widened appreciatively when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, Theresa replied, flustered by the genuine admiration in his gaze. You look quite handsome yourself. The dining room was busy but not crowded. Adam had reserved a table by the window where the late summer sunset provided a romantic backdrop. Theresa was acutely aware of curious glances from other diners. No doubt their appearance together would feed the town gossip mill. Does it bother you? Adam asked, noticing her awareness of the attention. What? The staring, he nodded. Theresa considered the question. A month ago, it would have mortified me. Now, I find I care less about what others think. That's a valuable freedom, Adam observed. They ordered roast beef for Adam, chicken for Theresa, and wine that Adam insisted on despite Theresa's protests that water would suffice. It's a celebration, he reminded her, and the beginning of your new life deserves to be marked properly. As they ate, their conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from the store's latest shipment of goods to a new foal born at the ranch. It struck Theresa how comfortable she felt with Adam, how natural it was to share the details of her day with him. After dessert, apple pie that the hotel was famous for, they lingered over coffee. The dining room had emptied somewhat, the other patrons drifting away to their evening activities. Thank you for tonight, Theresa said. It's been wonderful. The pleasure was mine, Adam replied. He hesitated, then reached across the table to cover her hand with his. Theresa, I want you to know something. Her heart quickened at his touch, but she didn't pull away. Yes. These past weeks, getting to know you, seeing your strength and your kindness. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I've come to care for you deeply. Theresa's breath caught. She'd suspected Adam's feelings, had recognized her own growing attachment to him, but having it spoken aloud made it real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Adam, you don't need to say anything, he interrupted gently. I know your divorce isn't final, and even when it is, you may need time. I understand that. I just wanted you to know where I stand. The simple honesty of his declaration moved her deeply. This was so different from Martin's flashy compliments and grand promises. I care for you too, Theresa admitted softly. More than I expected to, more than I thought possible after everything with Martin. Adam's expression brightened. Then I'm a fortunate man. But you're right, I need time. Theresa turned her hand to squeeze his. When I'm truly free, when the divorce is final, then perhaps we can see where this leads. I'll wait, Adam promised. However long you need. As they walked back to where Hannah was waiting with the buggy, Theresa felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time, the future seemed full of promise instead of dread. But fate had other plans. 2 days later, Sheriff Donovan rode out to the Double J with grim news. Martin Flint was dead. Found him behind the saloon this morning, the sheriff explained as they gathered in the ranch house parlor. Looked like he'd been in a fight, knife wound to the chest. Theresa felt strangely numb. Do you know who did it? Not yet, Sheriff Donovan admitted. But he wasn't well liked around town. Could have been any number of people he'd cheated or offended. Adam studied Theresa's face. Are you all right? I don't know, she answered honestly. I hated what he did, what he became, but I never wished him dead. Of course not, Hannah said, putting an arm around Theresa's shoulders. You're a good person. It's natural to feel conflicted. The sheriff cleared his throat. There's something else you should know, Miss Adams. When we searched Flint's room at the boarding house, we found some papers, including a marriage certificate. Theresa frowned. Yes, we were married in Helena 3 years ago. This wasn't your certificate, the sheriff said carefully. This was a certificate showing Martin Flint married to a Sarah Newcomb in St. Louis, dated 1869. The room went silent as the implications sank in. He was already married when he married me, Theresa finally asked, her voice barely audible. Sheriff Donovan nodded. It appears so, which means your marriage to Flint was never legal to begin with. Theresa wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. So I never needed a divorce. No, madam. In the eyes of the law, you've been Theresa Adams all along. After the sheriff left, Theresa sat in stunned silence while Hannah made tea. Adam paced the parlor, clearly agitated. I should be relieved, shouldn't I? Theresa finally said. I'm free without having to wait for the divorce. It's a shock, Adam acknowledged, sitting beside her. Finding out your marriage was never valid. It's a lot to process. Theresa sipped the tea Hannah handed her. I spent 3 years of my life with a man who lied about everything. Even our marriage was a lie. Not everything was a lie, Hannah said gently. Your feelings were real. The life you built, however difficult, was real. Theresa nodded, grateful for Hannah's understanding. I just feel so foolish. You were deceived by someone you trusted, Adam said firmly. That doesn't make you foolish. It makes him dishonorable. The simple truth of his words pierced through Theresa's confusion. Martin had been dishonorable in every sense. He had lied, cheated, and ultimately tried to barter her away. His death was tragic, but it was also the final severing of the bonds that had tied her to him. She was truly free. The realization washed over her like a cleansing rain, leaving clarity in its wake. She looked at Adam, at his concerned face and warm eyes, and knew with sudden certainty what she wanted. Adam, she said, setting her teacup down. Could we talk? Alone. Hannah took the hint immediately. I just remembered Mrs. Cooper needed help with inventory, she said, rising. I'll be in the kitchen if anyone needs me. When Hannah had gone, Adam moved to sit beside Theresa on the sofa. What is it? Theresa took a deep breath. When you said you'd wait however long I needed, I meant it, he assured her. I don't want to wait any more, Theresa said quietly. Martin's death is shocking and learning about his deception even more so, but it's also clarified things for me. She met his gaze directly. I care for you, Adam, deeply, and I want to see where this leads starting now. Adam's expression softened. Are you sure? There's no rush, Theresa. I've spent 3 years living a lie, she replied. I don't want to waste any more time not pursuing what might make me happy. Adam reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. And you think I might make you happy? I think you already do, Theresa admitted. More than I ever expected to be again. Adam's smile was like sunrise breaking across his face. May I kiss you, Theresa Adams? Her heart fluttered. Yes. He leaned forward, one hand coming up to gently cradle her cheek as his lips met hers. The kiss was tender, unhurried, a promise rather than a demand. When they parted, Theresa felt a sense of rightness that had been absent from her life for too long. I've wanted to do that since the day I found you on Main Street, Adam confessed, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. I'm glad you waited, Theresa smiled. Some things are better when they are earned, not taken. Adam nodded, understanding the reference to Martin's treatment of her. I will never take you for granted, Theresa, not for a single day. I believe you, she said, and realized she truly did. Martin Flint's death brought a swift end to the investigation into Theresa's legal status. Judge Wilson, after reviewing the evidence of Martin's prior marriage, issued a declaration that Theresa's marriage had been null and void from the beginning. She was officially Theresa Adams and had been all along. Life at the Double J settled into a new pattern. Theresa continued working at the store with Hannah, but now Adam often came to town to escort them home, using any excuse to spend more time with Theresa. Their courtship progressed steadily, each day deepening their connection. Adam was everything Martin had not been: reliable, honest, considerate. He valued Theresa's opinions, encouraged her independence, and never made her feel like a possession. When he held her hand or kissed her goodbye, it was with a reverence that healed old wounds she hadn't realized were still open. As autumn painted the Montana landscape in gold and crimson, Adam took Theresa riding to his favorite spot on the ranch, a hilltop overlooking the valley, where the Double J spread out below them like a patchwork quilt. My father brought me here when I was 8 years old, Adam said as they dismounted. He pointed to everything we could see and said, "This is our legacy, son. Not just the land and the cattle, but the life we build here." Theresa watched as he gazed out over the ranch, pride and responsibility evident in his posture. He'd be proud of what you've accomplished. I hope so. Adam turned to her, taking her hands in his. Theresa, I brought you here for a reason. Her pulse quickened. Oh. This place represents everything I value: home, family, the future. His eyes, warm and sincere, held hers. And I can't imagine that future without you in it. Theresa's breath caught as Adam dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. I love you, Theresa Adams. Your strength, your kindness, your resilience, everything about you. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Joy surged through Theresa, bright and pure. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Adam, I will marry you. He rose, pulling her into his arms for a kiss that spoke of promises kept and a future filled with love. When they parted, both were smiling so widely it almost hurt. I have something for you, Adam said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a simple gold ring with a small sapphire. It was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they became engaged. It's beautiful, Theresa breathed as he slipped it onto her finger. Hannah helped me size it, Adam admitted. She's been dropping hints about us for weeks now. Theresa laughed. She's not exactly subtle. No, Adam agreed, but she loves us both and she wants us to be happy. He brushed a strand of hair from Theresa's face. "Are you happy, Theresa?" "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "When Martin traded me away that night, I thought my life was over. I never imagined it was actually just beginning." They were married on the first day of November 1875, in a simple ceremony at the Dillon Church. Hannah stood as Theresa's witness, beaming with satisfaction at the match she'd helped foster. The entire town turned out for the celebration. Any earlier gossip about Theresa's arrival in Dillon long forgotten in the face of the couple's obvious devotion. Theresa wore a new dress of pale blue silk, a wedding gift from Hannah, and carried wildflowers gathered from the meadow where Adam had proposed. Adam, handsome in a new suit, couldn't take his eyes off his bride as she walked down the aisle toward him. The minister's words were traditional, but when it came time for their vows, Adam added his own promise. "I will cherish you always, Theresa, as the priceless treasure you are." Tears glistened in Theresa's eyes as she responded with her own addition. "And I will trust you with my heart, Adam, knowing it has found its true home." The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed half the territory. When Adam finally swept Theresa away to the privacy of the ranch house, Hannah tactfully staying in town with friends, they were both giddy with happiness. "Mrs. Jensen," Adam murmured as he carried her across the threshold. "I like the sound of that," Theresa replied, her arms around his neck. "Though I hope you know you've married a woman with definite opinions." Adam laughed. "I would expect nothing less. This is a partnership, Theresa. Your voice matters as much as mine. Even when it comes to ranch decisions, especially then," he said seriously. "You have a good head for business. The way you've organized the store's accounts proves that. I'd be a fool not to value your insights." Theresa kissed him, overwhelmed by the simple respect in his words. "I love you, Adam Jensen." "And I love you, Theresa Jensen," he replied, setting her gently on her feet. "More than I have words to express." What followed was the beginning of a marriage unlike anything Theresa had experienced before, one built on mutual respect, shared decisions, and a love that grew deeper with each passing day. Spring of 1876 brought new life to the Double J. The cattle herd expanded with healthy calves. The horses Adam bred gained recognition throughout the territory for their quality, and the ranch prospered under the joint guidance of Adam and Theresa. And on a warm May morning, Theresa shared news that brought tears of joy to Adam's eyes. "A baby," he whispered, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby," Theresa nodded, her own eyes shining. "Dr. Simmons confirmed it yesterday. He says the baby should arrive in December." Adam gathered her in his arms, his face alight with wonder. "A child, our child." He kissed her tenderly. "Thank you, my love." "For what?" Theresa laughed. "For everything. For coming to Dillon. For trusting me. For building this life with me." His voice grew husky with emotion. "For giving me a family of my own." As her pregnancy progressed, Theresa bloomed. The morning sickness passed quickly, and she maintained her involvement in both the ranch and the store, though she agreed to reduce her hours as her due date approached. Hannah was ecstatic about becoming an aunt, already planning handmade gifts for her future niece or nephew. "This baby will be the most cherished child in Montana territory," she declared, working on a quilt of soft flannel patches. December arrived with a blanket of snow and rising anticipation. Adam rarely left Theresa's side, arranging for the ranch hands to take on more responsibilities so he could be available when the baby decided to make its appearance. On the night of December 12, as a winter storm howled outside, Theresa woke to the first contractions. By morning, with Hannah and the midwife in attendance, she delivered a healthy baby boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's chin. He's perfect, Adam whispered, cradling his son with awestruck gentleness. Absolutely perfect. What shall we call him? Theresa asked, exhausted but radiant. Adam considered for a moment. Thomas, after your father. Theresa's heart swelled with love for this man who always thought of what would bring her joy. Thomas Daniel Jensen, she suggested, after both our fathers. Thomas Daniel it is, Adam agreed, placing their son in her arms. Looking down at Thomas's tiny face, Theresa felt the final pieces of her heart heal. From the depths of despair being traded away like an object of no value, she had found her way to this moment of pure, untarnished happiness. Spring of 1877 brought more changes to the Double J. With the ranch thriving and Thomas growing healthy and strong, Adam and Theresa decided to expand their operations. They purchased the adjacent property when old Mr. Williamson decided to retire to California, nearly doubling the size of the Double J. It's a risk, Adam acknowledged as they rode the new boundary line together, Thomas secure in a special carrier Adam had designed for his saddle. But I think it's the right move for our future. I agree, Theresa said. The railroad's coming closer every year. When it reaches Dillon, we'll be positioned perfectly to expand our cattle operation. Adam glanced at her with admiration. You've become quite the rancher's wife. Partner, Theresa corrected with a smile. I believe we agreed I'm your partner in this venture. Indeed we did, Adam laughed. And the best partner a man could ask for. As they crested a hill, Theresa reined in her horse to take in the view. The Double J spread out below them, cattle dotting the green pastures, the ranch buildings neat and prosperous in the distance. It's beautiful, she said softly. Yes, it is. But Adam wasn't looking at the ranch. He was looking at her, his expression tender. Every day I thank whatever twist of fate brought you to Dillon that morning. Theresa reached across to take his hand. Even the darkest moments can lead to light, it seems. Speaking of light, Adam said, his tone shifting to one of teasing affection, this little one is getting heavy. Shall we head back to the house? Thomas, now 5 months old, gurgled happily in his carrier, oblivious to the deep conversation passing between his parents. Yes, Theresa agreed. Let's go home. Home. Such a simple word, but one that had taken on profound meaning for Theresa. Home wasn't just the ranch house or the land. It was Adam's steady presence, Thomas's innocent trust, the life they were building together. A life founded on respect, partnership, and a love that had transformed her understanding of what was possible. As they rode back toward the ranch house, Theresa remembered the words Adam had spoken to her that fateful morning in Dillon, when she'd been at her lowest. Then you're priceless to me. He had meant it then, and he proved it every day since, not with grand gestures, but with consistent kindness, unwavering support, and a love that valued her exactly as she was. The woman who had once been traded for a horse had indeed found her true worth, and it was beyond price. Years passed, each one bringing new joys and challenges to the Jensen family. Thomas was joined by a sister, Emma, in 1879, and another brother, James, in 1882. The Double J flourished under Adam and Theresa's joint management, becoming one of the most respected ranches in Montana. Hannah eventually married the town doctor, a widower who had moved to Dillon in 1878, but she remained deeply involved in both the store and her brother's family. Her wedding gifts to Adam and Theresa had been her share of the store and a promise to always be available to watch her niece and nephews when needed. By the spring of 1885, Dillon had grown from a small frontier town to a bustling community. The railroad had arrived the previous year, bringing new opportunities and challenges. Theresa, now a respected businesswoman as well as a rancher's wife, had expanded the general store to include a second location near the train station. "You're building quite the empire," Adam teased one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Thomas and Emma play with the new puppy while baby James slept in Theresa's arms. "Hardly an empire," Theresa laughed. "Just making sure our children have options when they're grown." Adam's expression softened as he looked at their three beautiful children. "I think the greatest gift we've given them isn't the ranch or the stores, but the example of our marriage." Theresa raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what example is that?" "That love should lift you up, not diminish you," Adam said simply. "That partnership is stronger than ownership. That true value isn't about what someone will pay for you, but who you are." Tears pricked Theresa's eyes at the profound truth in his words. "When did you get so wise, Adam Jensen?" "I married a wise woman," he replied with a grin. "Some of it was bound to rub off eventually." As the children's laughter filled the evening air and the setting sun painted the ranch in golden light, Theresa felt a contentment that went bone deep. The journey from that desperate morning in Dillon to this peaceful evening had been long and sometimes difficult, but every step had led her exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of a man who saw her true value. Surrounded by children who would grow up knowing their worth could never be measured in dollars or possessions. At the center of a life built on love, respect, and the unshakable certainty that some things truly are priceless. And as Adam leaned over to place a gentle kiss on her forehead, Theresa knew with absolute certainty that she was one of them.